So here are 27 upgraded tips that you can't live without, which includes a way to know what shields your enemies are using just by looking at them, how to survive even after the timer reaches 0, and how to heal your enemies better by changing just 2 simple settings. I will be separating these tips into combat, movement, gameplay, inventory, and settings, so we get to cover every major tips that you need to know. Starting off with the combat tips. For tip number 1, hip firing is actually really good in this game, as close quarters combat is actually easier without aiming down sights. Not all weapons are as accurate, but the close range ones like the Il Toro shotgun, Vanilla, Stitcher, Kettles, and other similar ones are amazing with hip firing. Sometimes zooming in while your enemy is next to you can be a disadvantage, so try this combat tip out. And for tip number 2, you can actually tell what armor they are wearing, whether it's a light, medium or heavy, just by looking at their back. If you pay close attention to their raider's back, there will be cosmetic differences depending on which type of shields they are wearing. Light shields will give you 1 module here, medium shields will give you 2 modules, and heavy shields will give you 3. Obviously, you can't easily spot this during heated fights, but it is great info to know while playing solo, or if you are stalking someone quietly at the back and you just want more details on what you're getting yourself into. The thing kinda sticks out a bit, so if you're quick on the eye, you can probably find out what shields they are using before the fight even begins. As for tip number 3, add shield recharges first to your queue so you don't need to scroll in circles. Now Outriders is a game where you can get into fights anytime, so for this tip, make sure to add your shield recharger first to your queue, especially if you are in a hot zone, just in case you got shot first. This way, instead of opening the utility wheel and select your shield to replenish it, you can just press Q immediately so that you can take it out and save some precious time. As for the next tip, if you ran out of shield recharges, Healing Arcs can net you some Arc Power Cell, which can be placed into your use bar to replenish your shield as well. They can only refill 2 bars of shield, so it's not the best option, but can be a godsend if you ran out of better options. For tip number 5, you need to understand that shields are not a second health bar, as they just act as a damage reductor. You will still get some damage to your HP if you got shot, even if you have shields, and will receive full damage if you ran out of it. So always prioritize in healing your HP first if you are at critical levels. Now moving on to the movement tips. For tip number 6, stamina is a huge importance to take care of, as you don't want to run out in the worst of times. So a great way to travel further is to run and slide in cycles. This way you'll be able to conserve your stamina and reach further places more efficiently without needing to rest often. And while you're doing this, for tip number 7 is to turn around while sliding if you want to peek what's behind you, even sideways. This is crucial as you want to be aware of your surroundings or if any players are actually chasing you. So do make sure to turn around while sliding once in a while. It will not slow you down and the momentum of the slide will still carry you forward. So use this often in the open. Now for tip number 8, in a case where you're running out of stamina, try your best not to deplete your stamina all the way to 0. It is always better to stop using your stamina as it is almost empty. Emptying your stamina gauge will lock you out of any stamina activity for a few seconds, like running, rolling, etc. via the blinking indicator here. So if you are almost empty, just stop and jog and let it refill back up before continuing. Now for tip number 9, adrenaline shot is your best friend. If you really need to reach a place faster and you don't want to stop, craft the adrenaline shot. It is super cheap to craft, which costs almost nothing, so you can spam it as much as you want. It doesn't give you unlimited stamina, but it regenerates your stamina so fast for a few seconds that it might as well be unlimited for a while. So yes, always bring adrenaline shots, especially while running out in the open, as you don't want to be sitting ducks. Now right next, let's move on to the gameplay tips. So the first tip for gameplay is understanding the spawn timers. When you spawn into a raid, there will either be 30 minutes left, which is a fresh raid, 25 minutes left, or 19 minutes left. Do note that these are estimates and you may join earlier or later by a few seconds to these timers. Now why is this important? Well, depending on the time left in a raid after you load in, it may alter your gameplay completely. For example, spawning in with 30 minutes left is a fresh raid, which means more loot left for you to find. However, this is also when the raid is at its most dangerous, because this is when the maximum amount of players are still in the game, so it will be way easier to find enemies around. On the other hand, spawning in later with around 19 minutes left means that the chances of unlooted areas are reduced. However, it will generally be safer as more players have already either extracted or have been knocked out. In short, always look at the timer left after you spawn, as that will give you an idea of what you're getting yourself into and play accordingly. Now for tip number 11, be aware of the spawn timers for enemies as well. As now that you're aware of spawn timers, if you spawn in early into a raid, just be aware that there will be more players coming in later waves, so always be on the lookout even after you've killed a few players. That does not necessarily mean that there will be lesser players in the server. Players will not spawn after the 19-ish minute timer, so until then, always be on the lookout, and then you can catch your breath probably after the 15-minute mark. Now as for tip number 12, in order to maximize your EXP gain, you want to loot and open every single body and locker you find, and yes, even if they are already opened by someone else. By checking on open lockers, you can also get around 200 EXP for each bags, containers, and etc. Also, looting bodies will give you 500 EXP each, even if you don't take anything out. So my suggestion is to just press E and escape for a few easy EXP. This is why in the new Stella Montes map, the Seed Vault is considered as a godlike EXP farm, as there are just so many seed containers in there to loot for easy EXP. Now for tip number 13, let's move on to keycards. If you have keycards, then please prioritize in using them at night. If you don't know, night raids will increase the loot value of everything you've opened, which means easier epic and even legendary items. Keycards are one of the best things to have, but they can be pretty rare to find, so you don't want to waste them and maximize your chance for the best loot possible at night. Now, many people might disagree with me on this for tip number 14, but I strongly suggest to only use the free loadout option as a last resort. What this means is that even if you don't really have much money left, then sure, go and rock a free loadout. But if you can craft a simple MK1 loot augment and a light shield, then please do so. The reason is because you lose out on safe pockets that you can't have on free loadouts, and trust me when I say that when you get something super rare like a very useful blueprint, you're gonna wish you have a safe pocket, as extracting can now be the most stressful thing you've done in that day. So just trust me, rock that MK1 augment and save yourself the stress thanks to the safe pockets. Now what if you are dead broke and you have no choice but to rock the free loadout? Well, what I suggest is to enter a raid with the free loadout, but do not loot. Instead, aim to extract immediately at the nearest extract and use that previously free kit and re-enter the raid. You can exchange a free augment that you got into any MK1 loot augment, and voila, you now have a safe pocket and a free weapon and shields for your next raid. Again, try to minimize looting with free loadouts if you want the highest possible chance of securing your loot. Now for tip number 16, many people know that you can press alternate to roll on the ground. However, if you are trying to be sneaky but rolling just doesn't cover that much ground, you can briefly press the sprint button and roll at the same time to initiate a further roll. This will make your character stand up, but you can press crouch again after. This can be a great way to catch people off guard or to cover more grounds without making too much noise. Now for tip number 17, did you know that you can still extract from the map even if the timer hits 0? Yes, you won't die when the timer hits 0 if you have caught the lift at the very last second. So technically, you can call the extract with 1 second left and still survive. This is great if you want to maximize your chance at extracting with the least possible amount of players left on the map. As for the next tip, you gotta be careful of what you do if you are trying to be sneaky, as everything, and I mean everything you do, will make a sound. Aside from the obvious shooting your gun or running around, doing things like crafting in-game, placing traps, or even recycling materials in your inventory will also make a sound for other players. So keep this in mind the next time you are in a night raid and don't wish to alert anyone. Now for tip number 19, please do the trials and don't forget them. Most people just leave them alone, but you can get amazing loot and even blueprints from them, and make sure you do these trials at special conditions like night raids, hidden bunkers, electromagnetic storms, etc. as you'll get double the score to achieve the 3 stars faster. This will reset weekly. You cannot accumulate these scores in separate raids, as it will only count the highest score you've got from a single raid. So don't go thinking that your previous raid and your current raid score will combine. It does not work that way. So yeah, make sure to do the trials as it will reset weekly and you don't want to miss out on these free rewards. Now onto the inventory tips. Safe pockets are extremely important to keep your loot in case you are knocked out from a raid. And obviously, the more safe pockets you have, the better. And depending on which augments you bring in a raid, you will have either no safe pockets all the way to 3 safe pockets. As mentioned previously, free loadouts will always give you 0 safe pockets. Now, a common misconception is that paying augments will always give you 3 safe pockets, and that is wrong. So not every augments are created equal. So if safe pockets are your concern, do double check which ones will give you the most amount of safe pockets in the info. And for tip number 21, track all of your workbenches upgrade. Selling or recycling your stuff by accident when you need them can be a headache. So I would highly recommend to track all of your upgrades immediately for your workbenches, as these materials needed will be marked by an eye icon here, so you won't accidentally sell them off in case you need it. Now for tip number 22, if you are not sure on whether to keep that material or not for future upgrades, the next tip is that I would highly recommend for you to keep at least 1 stack of that item in your inventory first. This is only if you are really unsure whether or not to keep it, but you don't want to risk selling it off just in case. Now, what if you are sure that you have kept everything you need and need to dispose some items to make some space in your stash? Well, most people would recycle them into raw materials, but instead, I would highly recommend for you to sell them off instead, as about 80% of the time, selling off these materials would actually gain you more value in return. This is how I racked up a ton of money in my account, so make sure to sell the materials instead of recycling it unless you really need the output of recycling. Now for tip number 24, your inventory will tell you how much value your stash is actually worth. While in a raid, you can actually check how valuable your inventory right beside the weight limit right here. This will give you a money value of how much your haul is worth, so you get an idea of how loaded you currently are, and whether to escape right now or to loot some more. Now let's move on to one of the most important ones, which are the settings. For tip number 25, the first setting that you want to change is the music audio while in game. I would highly recommend for you to either lower this down or completely turn it off. Reason being is that there will be a suspenseful music playing in the background while there are 5 minutes or 2 minutes left in a raid, and the music can get pretty loud and may hinder your ability to listen to footsteps, especially at nighttime. Now, I personally love the music as it gives you the adrenaline, but if you want some sort of competitive edge in regards to sound, do lower this down or turn it off to hear footsteps in night raids during those last few minutes. Now, I would also recommend to turn on night mode audio, as I was skeptical at first at how people are saying it's easier to listen to footsteps while this turned on, but it was definitely a surprise when it did actually help me. What this does is that it lowers louder audio like explosions, etc., and loudens the audio of quieter sounds like footsteps. For me, it helped me greatly in listening for footsteps, so give this a try, especially if you are using headphones. And finally, for tip number 27, another settings to change is changing the FOV to max. This will give you more grounds to work with in terms of vision, and performance-wise, it's not that taxing. At least for me on a medium range PC. Arc Raiders is a game where every details and things happening on screen is important, so having this set to max will give you a clear advantage against those who doesn't. And that's about it. If these tips helped you out, please like this video and share it to your friends to get the best possible experience in Arc Raiders. I'll see you in the next video.